Thursday, June 13th, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. One of the things I like to do on this channel is to look at the bigger picture, not just economically, but geopolitically and socially. Yeah, I try not to focus on short-term moves and noise. We look at the bigger picture, if you want to call it macro. So what we're going to look at today is what former head of the World Bank, actually, James Wolfenson, publicly stated was the big shift. And he was right about that. And we're going to look at why the big shift of wealth from the West to the East is unstoppable and is cyclical. Before I do, I like to just make a few announcements. Uh, the first one is about gold investments. Gold investments, of course, are my affiliate in the UK for precious metals. We've been dealing with them for years here on the channel, mainly because I got asked, where can I buy gold and silver? So if you're in the UK and you're interested, or you're looking to add to your gold and silver stack, check the details below in the description of my video. They always have a special there. And secondly, I like to talk about my precious metals affiliate in the US, and it's Miles Franklin. They have a couple of specials in platinum and in silver, so there isn't much in terms of special this week. But if you want to get in touch with them, you can email info@milesfranklin.com, mention Mario or Monaco 64, and you can also call them on 1-800-822-8080 and mention me too. And finally, I'd just like to give a shout out to the Dirty Man Safe, which is very popular with the viewers on this channel. So it's a way to hide your valuables, not just gold and silver, but maybe your crypto hard wallet if you're into that, documents, jewelry, and for more details, yeah, go to the link below in the description of this video as well. You get 10% off if you use my link, and I think he's still or Dirty Man Safes is still sending a gift. So back to the big shift, and we could argue whether it's done by design or not. But one thing I think is certain is that it's inevitable, the shift of wealth from the G7 or the West to East. And what does East mean? Well, it means China and India especially, and also Russia and all the global South. And I've spoken about this, and one of the reasons I'm speaking about this today as well is that there's a lot of news, of course, about what's going on vis-a-vis BRICS. And I think, again, it's just a normal power shift. It's cyclical. So I'm going to put a couple of links up in the cards up here, so you can listen to these videos. One of them is by, well, both of them are by James Wolfenson. He's passed away. He was a very well-connected international banker. He was the head of the World Bank. His father worked for the Rothschilds. So he was born in Australia and then moved to the United States. He was a Wall Street insider, and he made a couple of speeches. One was at the Stanford Business School back in 2010, I think, and he called it the big shift. And he explained how when he was born in the 30s, and the world was very different. Most of the wealth, about 80% of the wealth, was concentrated in the West, and the rest of the world had only 20% of the wealth, and that had been shifting. And he talked about the same shift in a speech he made about a year later to the Council on Foreign Relations, which is another big globalist organization in New York. It's the sister organization to the Royal Institute for International Affairs, or Chatham House in the UK. Some people argue these people, the Anglo-American Empire, have been running the world, and maybe so. And that's one of the reasons why uh, I think it's partly cyclical and it's partly by design, because if you're part of a group that has had generational wealth that control most of the assets on the planet, and you have people researching and working and looking at history for you, uh, and these people see these cycles, why wouldn't you try to take advantage of it? And I guess we're just little flies on the wall, so to speak, trying to see what's going on. So one of the interesting things he said about this big shift is that after World War II, China and India, for example, they had less than 2% of GDP of the world. He calls it the global GDP. And by so uh, the West had almost like more than 80%, maybe 90%. But by the year 2000, uh, we were down to 70%, the G7, the rich industrialized countries, if you want to call it, and the emerging markets or the third world had 30%. So that was shifting slowly. And so he was speaking about 14, 13 years ago, and he forecast that by 2050, this balance will have shifted, and the West, the United States, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, maybe Japan, South Korea, we'd be down to 35% of the wealth, and the rest of the world, Eurasia, if you want to call it, China, uh, India, Russia, Latin America, maybe Africa a little bit, they would have 65% of global GDP. And I think he was right about that. Why was he right about that? Is that because he was in the know? Partly. But I would argue that it's also part of cyclicality, because things always change. Empires uh, rise and fall, cultures rise and fall. And one thing he mentioned, though, that makes me believe that it's a lot of it is cyclical. And again, if you are part of this clique, this the top international bankers, or even Illuminati, if you want to call it, if you know that's going to happen, you're going to be positioning yourself not for 1 month or a year. You're going to be positioning yourself generationally. And he mentions that in 1815, right towards at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, China and India had 50% of global GDP. And prior to that, they also topped in 1500 at 50% of GDP. So you can see that it's something cyclical. The other thing that he said at his CFR speech, and I quote, he said, "There's no question that's the way we're moving." So I have recently spoken about the petrodollar, the fact that it's waning. I still don't believe the petrodollar is deal, or the joint economic and military pact between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that was signed on June 8th, 1974. I don't believe that has expired. It's just that they're not going to cooperate, and Saudi Arabia um, is moving towards this new world. The wealth is shifting, not just towards China and Russia, but to that part of the world. And I think it's unavoidable and unstoppable. And what about all the geopolitical mayhem we're seeing? Well, I think it's a symptom. and sometimes it seems like the leaders in the West are, well, they are inept. They are like they do all the wrong things, and I think it's just what happens at the end of an empire. It's very normal. While the leaders in the rest of the world, even though they're not perfect, they seem a bit more competent, mainly because our leaders are so incompetent. So what I'm trying to say here, yes, the world is going to shift, and we have to get ready for that. It doesn't mean to say that things are going to be bad in the West. It's all relative, I think. And one thing that I think is going to change massively is the wherewithal to create credit out of thin air, like we have had since 1971, especially in the West. I think that's going to change quite a bit. And all that means is that things are not going to be as affordable, and we're probably going to have to work for our yeah, for our keep. We in the West have shifted um, a lot of the manufacturing, even the service industry, to these countries, and it's all part of this shift. Uh, is it any wonder that China became a member of the WTO in 2001, right in the beginning of the century? And I think that was part of this big shift. And maybe, yeah, the people who run the international organizations, the bankers, uh, they knew that this, and they're playing right along with it. After all, the Rhodes Scholarship has been also adopted to China. Uh, uh, Bill Clinton, of course, was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University, but now there's a Rhodes Trust for China. And guess who finances that? Well, the Blackstone Group and Stephen Schwartzman. So, yes, there is a lot of, I would say, influence from the big guys up there, but I think it's also inevitable, and it's all about cyclicality. And I'm not forgiving these guys. Or I think as well, this climate change green agenda is part of this. All it's going to do is make the rest of the world catch up with us a lot quicker in the West, because they're not following this green agenda as strictly as we are. And yeah, so what conclusions do we make from this? Well, uh, I think they are positive. I think a lot of the saber rattling about World War III, um, about Taiwan, and everything else is just a cover uh, between the leaders of these two blocs. For the general public, because behind the scenes, I think they're negotiating, because I think, as I said the other day, the shift towards BRICS and their own monetary order is a once in a lifetime event. And I think from uh, here on in, this shift is going to accelerate. And I think Mr. Wolfenson will be right about what's going to be happening by 2050. Yeah, Eurasia will have 65 or even more of global GDP. And he does say that it could be less or more, but it's definitely going that way. And yes, we can argue that it's by design. And I would say it's partly by design, but it's also partly cyclical, because things always change and these guys are just taking advantage of it. So before we look at the markets this morning, just wanted to look at a few tweets here I'm going to share with you. So this one is quite interesting here. We're seeing that, and this is part of this big shift. William Middlecoop, he tweeted, these days, the Saudis are much more interested in the BRICS plus than the G7 club. So it says here that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, will not attend the G7 summit due to his commitment to overseeing the hashtag Hajj season. He expressed his regrets in a telegram to Prime Minister of Italy. So that's another symptom of this big shift, I would say. The Sirius report, he said here, Lavrov at BRICS, the transition to a new world order will take a whole historical epoch and will be thorny as the US is trying to slow down the formation of multipolarity using trade as blackmail. Yeah, I think this is just another symptom. I think there's really nothing the US can do to stop this big shift, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to have a go at the US or anything. That was out yesterday. This is another symptom. Russia will shut down trading in dollars and euros on its primary financial marketplace, the Moscow Exchange. Again, this doesn't help either, dividing the world and shifting a lot of the wealth elsewhere to the BRICS, to the East, to the global South, whatever you want to call it. According to France, G7 leaders will agree to provide Ukraine with 50 billion of US of aid using the profits generated by frozen Russian sovereign assets. This is a massive message to the world. Paper assets are not safe. Maybe that's why the Saudi prince isn't attending, because he doesn't want to be party to this. Yeah, I'll just show you here. Yeah, you see there is a Rhodes Scholarship for China, and in conjunction with the Oxford Schwarzman China Graduate Scholarship. And yes, the bankers, they do run everything. I've spoken about this before. Secretary General of the UN accepts $8.5 million gift for the purchase of the UN site in New York, March 1947. Who donated the check? Well, John D. Rockefeller Jr. or the third. I'm not sure which one it was. And I'll show you here the videos that I'm going to put up in the cards for you. That's the John Wolfenson's speech at Stanford. And this is his short talk at the CFR. And this was back in, I think, 2011, preparing for China's rise. So these people have known what's going to come all along. So let's quickly look at the markets here. You see spot gold here, 23.17. We traded up to 40 yesterday after the FOMC statement, and then we came back down. We traded to a low of 08 overnight and a high of 27. Silver is down. I mean, we got up above 30 yesterday after the FOMC statement, and we came back down. And overnight, we actually went below 29. So we've rebounded back above 29 now. You can see the Dow futures is down 60. NASDAQ is on a rampage. NASDAQ 100 up 170. So is the S&P. So it looks like now the Fed is only forecasting, really, their dot plot is saying they're only going to cut once this year. It was about 4 or 6 times late last year people were expecting. So I think it's bullish for commodities and for gold and silver, because it shows the Fed is not happy about how they've been able to tame prices, or what they call inflation. So yeah, the currencies here you can see are pretty steady. The dollar is a bit stronger versus the yen. Crude oil down slightly, but still relatively elevated, and there's high grade copper. So there you go. Yeah, the big shift. on an individual basis, it shouldn't affect us, because if we know what's going on in the world, we can adapt to it, and that's always been my philosophy. And the other philosophy I have is never to expect politicians or governments or political parties to do anything for you. So keep that in mind and try not to waste too much energy with politics and elections. Uh, of course, that's up to you. That's the way I see it anyway. With that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.